Hi everybody, Monty McKinnon here. Thank you for joining me. I'm really pleased you're here and I'm pleased I'm here. It's very interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I went in for a vaccination for shingles. And I'd had this 10 years ago or whatever it was. The doctor said you had to go now and do it again because now there are 2 shots and it's better and yada, 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 all that stuff. So I had the first shot, no problem. Went for the second shot and asked the pharmacist about side effects, and they said, oh yes, there's some pretty interesting side effects with the second shot for sure, and it could be as simple as the flu, and headaches and stuffy and feeling weak and tired and wanting to throw up all the time. Yeah, well, guess what? I had all of that, plus I had the chills where I was just shaking like crazy, and it's like almost 80 outside. So come on, guys, really? So I pretty well had it with all their vaccines now. I'm sorry, but that's it. I'm not going through that again. But to make life just a little more interesting at the same time, my wife came home and told me that somebody came into her department who had COVID. And sure enough, they spread the COVID around, and my wife came home with the COVID. And after 2.5 years of avoiding it, guess what? Yep, I got it. And oh my goodness, was that an interesting experience. It's nothing worse than it was just like a cold. The back of my throat was like raw hamburger and I could hardly breathe. But other than that, it was not a real big deal. But you can still hear it. It's congestion. I'm congested right here in the chest, and that's all due to the cold that came along with the COVID. So life is good. Here we are. We're still carrying on. But now I'm back to the shop and able to do the work I want to get done on the beautiful neck that we're working on. Now, you'll see here in a moment, I'm going to show you this, how we do this line in around here. You can see there's a white line all trailing all in and around there. And you see that it's typical on guitars. What you don't see is the fact that it goes all the way through, and it's on the underside too, because that's glued onto here like this, and then it's all shaped and all that beautiful stuff that takes place. Well, this is the piece of veneer that I used to make that line. So I simply took this, put it on my workbench, as you'll see here, and let me show you a picture of that. Here it is on my workbench. I've already cut 3 of these. I simply use a razor blade and draw it alongside of a ruler, and I end up getting this thin piece of veneer like this that you can see here on this. I hope it'll point that out for you. So it's very thin. It's about, I don't know, that's probably 10, 12 thousandths of an inch in thickness. And there you go. So you've got that, and then that gets glued onto the end and onto the sides. And that's what I want to show you here, is how we go about doing that. Now, the first picture that you're going to see here, or the next picture you're going to see here actually, is some wax paper on the workbench. And that's so that I don't end up gluing this to the workbench. I don't want to do that. And so the ruler is on the bench because I place the neck on top of the ruler, which raises it just a tad so it's not flush with the workbench. And then what happens is when you put the purfling around there, or the binding, it goes down to the workbench so that it is below the area here, so that it's going to be nice and tight. You want to make sure you have that, because when you put this binding on, you don't want to see any of the white under here. You want that binding right down to the bottom, so when you sand this, which I have done, it's all good, and you've got a nice clean brown stripe of wood running on both sides here, so that you can put your dots in there for your playing ability here. After we shape all of this stuff, we'll do that. And then it just sets up so nicely. So take a look at this. What you'll see next is the end piece, and I use these bench dogs. I simply take a piece of scrap wood, and this is the bench dog, and I simply put it into the hole, put the piece up against that got the wax paper there, and then I put this, I butt it against here, and then I put it on the other side of the workbench here, and I use the actual vise to pull it out and to tighten it up, and that works beautifully. What you'll see here next is I'm actually doing the part where I'm putting in this piece running along here. Now, in order to do that, I have here a piece of wood. This has just got a straight edge on it. The vise here has 2 dogs, so it sits like that. And then I simply put this on the workbench. Let me get this out of the way so you can see this a little better here. So this here, got to be careful of the T now. This is on the workbench, and then what you do is you use 2 wedges. I've got this wedge and this wedge, and I simply put the piece up against this flat piece here. I've got glue on it now. I put glue on it. Bring that into there like so. And then this will just slide into here. Let's do this other side first. This will slide into here. And what happens is I end up bringing this tight, and so I can just crank this in, and it tightens it up against this board here and keeps it flat. I make sure that it's down all the way to the bench, because remember, I've got this ruler underneath here, and what that does is raise the fingerboard enough that I can make sure that I've got this all the way down. So I do that, and once that's all done, I'm very careful to sand the edge here because it extends out, and then I like to sand that edge off. And then I turn around and I simply do the same thing on the other side. And it's not that difficult. You can do it on any kind of a bench. Now, if you don't have bench dogs, which are these holes that are in here, and these are your brass dogs that you get. Maybe you can see them better if I put them on here. It's pretty tough with the hands. There they are there. They look like little, I don't know, bullets, hand grenades, whatever. Anyway, there they are. They're all brass. So if you don't have those, you can always get these and then just take a 3/4 inch drill bit and put a couple of drill holes in your top and in your vise that you've got on the end, and then make your own. It's not really that hard to do. And then I always like to put them into a empty tea container, and I know where they are. Those are not cheap, but they're absolutely necessary. Now what you'll see here is I've got this all pieced in and around the end here, and you can see that very clearly on this particular shot that I'm showing you right now. It's kind of neat. It worked out extremely well. You can see how we put the piece of, we do the same thing that we did with the purfling with the binding. So it goes up against there and it gets forced in there, and you'll see that right here. And then I do the same thing with that that we did with this piece of wood here. We use the same thing for the binding and get that all in place, and then you just simply sand it down, and that's basically all there is to it. Now, one of the neat things is we get to the point where we're at the guitar body here, and I have already, I just dropped the nut there, I have already cut this out here, and I've just trimmed this flush. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this on the sander so that I can, this is coming down at an angle, right? It comes like this, exaggerated, it's like that. So I'm going to just put a little bit of an angle on here, like that, just to keep it going. Now this fit pretty good. I'm ready now to take the neck and glue it into place. and I know that it's going to fit fine because I've got the 14th fret right here at the join where it meets the body, and I've got just a little bit, it just almost comes to the edge of the sound hole. I didn't want it quite on the sound hole, just like a 1/16 of an inch in front of it, and that is going to be fine. And the nut that just fell there, I will put that in here. So this is all set and ready to go. The truss rod is in. It's all been adjusted. I've got a hole through the transverse rod or bar that goes across the guitar here to support it, so we can put in an Allen wrench and make those adjustments when we need to. So that's about it. And it's all good, and I'll get that done, and I'm going to get this glued on. By the way, the injury I had to my hand on the last guitar I made, this is where it happened. When I had this like this, and I was clamping this down here like this and going like this and thinking I'm 28, you know, clamping it down like, and forgetting how old I really am, and realized that there are other clamps that I have that would do it a lot easier and not hurt myself. So anyway, that's all good. It all fits, and we're moving right along. And then I'm going to give this guitar away. So there you go. We'll be into the finishing on this body very, very soon. And when I do, I want to show you how I use the Starbond CA glue. And I use the Starbond all the time because it's so effective, and I love the crazy glue or super glue, whatever you want to call it, to make sure I've got all the areas tight around the body here. And I'm also going to put it in the neck of the guitar, and I'll show you that in our next video. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.